So I will share a quick presentation. So this is a neighborhood meeting for a rezoning request Z-19-22. My name is Hannah Reckow. I'm a planner with Raleigh Planning and Development. I'm joined by two of my colleagues in Planning and Development as well, John Enignost and JP Mansell. We're going to start this meeting with a presentation, kind of go over the overlay, the process of mapping that overlay, opportunities for participation, and then leave as much time as possible for your questions and answers. If you attended the previous neighborhood meeting, this will have very similar content, but we welcome any other questions you've thought up in the meantime. As I'm going through this, please feel free to use the chat to ask questions, and we can start from there when we get to that point. So to kind of start off, I'm going to take a step back and talk about bus rapid transit. You may or may not be aware, Wake County and Raleigh is getting a new type of bus service, bus rapid transit, or BRT for short. This is a high quality, frequent, reliable transit type. Has a few unique features you can see on the slide. Buses and BRT have their own lane. You board at a station rather than a stop, and you pay your fare before you get into the station. And a number of other features that make it run a little bit more like light rail than traditional bus service. And so Raleigh's going to get 4 routes, one going north from downtown on Capitol Boulevard, one going east from downtown on New Bern Avenue, one going west on Western Boulevard towards Cary, and then one going south on South Wilmington Street to Garner. And so this new transit service infrastructure is coming to Raleigh. The voters a while back approved a sales tax to fund it. And Raleigh's also thinking about how to prepare for this bus service. So you may have participated or heard of this process, Equitable Development Around Transit. This is a project that the city did over the past few years. It was essentially asking, given that we know we're going to getting this new transit infrastructure, and we know that Raleigh is growing and will continue to grow, how do we want to grow in the future? Do we want to continue to grow around cars and driving, or do we want to take a shift and start to grow more around frequent transit infrastructure, walking and biking? So this was a public process, and we pretty overwhelmingly heard a desire to grow more around transit. And there are a number of tools that came out of that project. One of them is Raleigh's zoning code. So zoning being the local law that regulates development in the city. So that's both uses, the types of land uses that can locate on a site, and also aspects of the building itself, how tall it can be, where in the site, what type of infrastructure needs to be provided. Every property in Raleigh has a zoning, is in a zoning district on the official zoning map. And some properties also have a second layer of zoning called an overlay district. So one of the tools that came out of equitable development around transit was this transit overlay district, a new, newly adopted zoning district that is intended to be applied in areas near frequent transit, so especially future BRT routes. The goals of the TOD are really to encourage a walkable mix of uses to locate near this future transit service, and to discourage more dispersed and car-oriented development in these areas. And so those are the broad goals of the TOD. A few images here that kind of illustrate a little bit more what that means and what that kind of looks like. So I think we've all been to places like the image on the top left, where there's a lot of kind of dispersed one-story buildings. You really need to access them by usually driving up, parking in the parking lot, going to your destination, a store, whatever it is, and then getting in your car and going to the next destination. So under TOD, the idea would really be to cluster more destinations closer to a transit stop. So that would mean higher densities, higher heights, closer to a station location, and then tapering off around to the surrounding area. And then in a similar vein, locating not just a higher density, but more of a mix of uses. So is there really only one type of use in the area? People don't use that area, don't go there some parts of the day, or is there shops and coffee shops and other retail, other destinations, a mix of destinations that make the ground floor an active space and a real place that people really are living in. And then what is the experience for a person walking, pedestrian or person arriving by transit or on bike? Is there a sidewalk available? And then once you're on the sidewalk, do you have to walk through a large parking lot in order to get to the front door of a location? So instead, bringing those doors right up to the street, having more pedestrian plazas and places for people to walk so that it is safe and comfortable and an enjoyable place to be. And then, lastly, last point to make is about public space. So are there public spaces for people to be in and rest and meet people? And are they designed in a way that facilitates all different types of modes of travel and are high quality public infrastructure? So those are kind of the goals of the TOD and what that might look like. I'm going to talk now a little bit about what the overlay does and how it achieves that. So the TOD is regulating development, working with the underlying zoning to do so. It touches on a lot of different topics, a handful of topics that I'm going to cover, I think, some of the key ones that I anticipate some questions about. But if you have questions about other aspects of what the TOD does, please feel free to ask that. We'd be happy to dive in. So the first one is prohibited uses. So as I mentioned, the goal is to discourage more car-oriented development. And so new car-oriented uses are among the list of prohibited uses. So this includes things like vehicle sales, car wash, gas station. New development of that kind would not be permitted in the TOD. And then the other category is residential uses that are have tended to be of lower scale and can be more car oriented. So single family and duplex. And the idea there is really we want, if there's going to be housing near a BRT station, we'd rather there be more rather than less housing. And so, and then if there's going to be new car dealerships of things of that nature, we'd rather that be located, not take up a site near a transit station. And I'm going to talk in a moment about the asterisks you see there. I will circle up back around. So a second topic is dimensional standards. This means things like how tall is a building, what are the setbacks, things of that nature. So also in the vein of encouraging higher densities near transit stations, there's a minimum building height of 2 stories in the TOD. In situations where the TOD is mapped on a residential district, the TOD does allow residential development in those areas to use the setbacks for the residential mixed use district. So those are shorter setbacks that would be permitted in the TOD. And then the last element of this is pertains to the neighborhood transition yards. So this is an existing requirement in Raleigh zoning code in situations where there is a property with a mixed use zoning district right next to a property with a residential zoning district. Development on the mixed use side needs to establish this neighborhood transition yard, which has a couple components to it, and the TOD would allow a smaller version, a shorter version of that to meet that requirement. Third topic I wanted to cover is the height bonus. So there are two height bonuses in the TOD that would allow development to build higher, more stories than the underlying zoning would limit development to. And so one is for providing affordable housing units. And so this is a 50% height bonus if 20% of the additional units you can build with that bonus are made affordable. And what affordable means under this overlay is affordable for less than 60% of area median income and staying at that rate of affordability for at least 30 years. So for example, if in a zoning district that has normally has a height limit of 3 stories, someone taking advantage of this height bonus could build 5 stories if 20% of those extra units were affordable for people making 60% or less of the area median income and staying affordable for 30 years. The second height bonus is for locating employment uses in TOD areas. So this is a 30% height bonus if the development is fully non-residential. So for a 3-story zoning district, that would allow up to 4 stories. And then finally, I wanted to touch on what happens in the TOD when a land use, an existing land use and existing structure don't conflict with the rules of the overlay. So this is what the UDO calls being non-conforming. So in a case when a structure is non-conforming, an existing structure, let's say, for example, a 1-story retail, it's a fairly common example, that structure could be continue to exist, could be rebuilt, could be renovated, maintained, like for like, if it happens to be damaged at any point. And then a non-conforming use, similarly, say for example, in the TOD, a single unit, single family residential prohibited use, that can continue to operate, be used in that way. And it can even be reestablished too if for some reason that use is vacant for a period of time, as long as that time period is no more than 2 years. So that is to say that non-conforming structures and uses, the TOD is really mainly focused on guiding future development. Existing uses and structures that don't conform with these can continue to operate, and there is also provisions to allow expansion of a non-conforming structure or expansion of a non-conforming use. In many cases, that would involve going to the Board of Adjustment and asking for a special use permit to be allowed to do that. So I'm going to turn now to talk about mapping the TOD. The City Council adopted the TOD district into the Raleigh zoning code, and then asked this staff to move forward with the requests to actually apply the overlay to the official zoning map. So changing the zoning map is done through a process called a rezoning request. This is a process that does end up in front of City Council again, and they make the final decision on. It is a public process with meetings like this one throughout the process. And so there are 2 pending city-initiated rezoning requests to apply the TOD. One is, this case, Z-19-22 to apply to areas around the Southern BRT route going south from downtown. And then the other one is Z-18-22 going west on Western Boulevard. We have a map that shows the full area for both of these requests online. We can provide the link or any questions you have if you want to take a look at this during this meeting now, that's fine too. In that map, the purple areas show the proposed overlay district boundary. And then there's also this gray buffer that shows kind of a quarter-mile buffer from the future route, which is just there for reference. So one more thing, you might notice from looking at this map that the purple areas are a little irregular around the route. There is some method to this proposal, and I wanted to talk about that, how we came up with where the proposed boundary came from. So the goal is, in applying the map, applying the overlay, is to encourage transit-oriented development, obviously along the future BRT route. And so we're looking in areas within a walking distance of the future route, which in this case is a quarter of a mile, is where we're looking. And the goal is really to apply it to areas that are already able to develop with more compact development, or maybe more likely to redevelop that way in the future. So based on this, staff came up with a handful of criteria for when a property would be included. And these criteria were applied just uniformly in that area of properties that fell within a quarter mile. So this is a list of criteria. I can go through each of them. It includes first areas that currently have mixed use zoning or heavy industrial zoning. So that's areas that can already redevelop, whether or not they are currently developed this way, with a mix of uses, including commercial and residential and office. And then secondly, areas that may not have mixed use zoning currently, but have a designation on the future land use map of mixed use district designation or medium or high scale residential. So these are areas that there is long range future land use guidance that would recommend a more compact development pattern there. And for this criteria, we're looking for properties that are more likely to develop and are larger, so an acre or more in size. The next criteria are, regardless of what the zoning is or what the recommended for in the future, these are properties that are right along the future BRT route. So they have frontage right on that future route. And this criteria, we looked at properties of half an acre or more in size. And then areas that are currently developed with an apartment or are part of an apartment development were included as well. And then finally, some city-owned property, not including parks and greenways, were included as well. So again, these are the criteria came up with and applied, just uniformly looking at all the properties that fall within a quarter mile, entirely fall or part of the property falls within a quarter mile of the future BRT route. Here's a list of exceptions that we did find that there were certain criteria that made a site less suitable for TOD. So that includes things like cemeteries, state property, schools and colleges, in the instance of where there's a rail line on the property, or where a rail line is cutting off walkable access. And then areas that have a historic landmark or district or a neighborhood conservation overlay district. So these are areas where there's sort of unique regulation or a specific character of the area that's really unique to that neighborhood. And so for this request, we left those out. It may be in the future that a closer look at each individual one might seem that it is appropriate to apply the TOD, but for this request, they were left out in the meantime. And then the last category are properties that have a conservation management, so largely undeveloped zoning, a planned development, or the downtown mixed-use zoning district were also left out. So we're going to turn now to talk about the rezoning process and what to expect. This flowchart shows the overall steps in the process. You can see there's several stages of review. Right now, we are at sort of the beginning stage. We're at a second neighborhood meeting with you all. The next step in the process would be for the request to be reviewed by the Planning Commission. So that's an appointed body, appointed by City Council. They review rezoning requests and make recommendations to the council on whether to approve or deny those requests. So they will hold a public meeting. Right now, we anticipate that meeting being next month, in April 21st, committee of the whole meeting. So that would be a public meeting. There's a venue for anyone who wants to speak. And then when the recommendation is made to City Council, they receive that and schedule a hearing for their own public hearing, another public meeting, and eventually make an action to approve or deny the rezoning request. So the opportunities to participate, you're at this meeting, you're already participating in the process, but looking forward, as I mentioned, you can participate in the Planning Commission review meetings, in the City Council public hearing, and then there's also the rezoning engagement portal. If you haven't already used this, this is an online survey, essentially. You have open for a period of time, you can put questions or comments in there. The comments, well, all the contents but mayor will be delivered to Planning Commission and City Council when they meet. So they will have that at their disposal to consider when they're hearing to live public comment and also reading written comment as well. That's a great way to participate, especially if you aren't sure if you're going to be able to be available for a meeting or don't want to. So a little bit more information about how to access the portal. We have a project page for mapping of the TOD. Go to raleighNC.gov and search for TOD mapping. That will be the first, should be the first hit in that search. And then there's a direct link to the survey for Southern BRT. Or if you're familiar with the engagement portal already, you can just search for TOD mapping Southern BRT in that list. And then my last comment on the portal, if we have heard from some property owners that they would like to be added to the request and others would like to be removed. And we are recommending any request like that, you put in the engagement portal. And when you do, just make sure that you put in the body of the comment your name, the address you're talking about, and the request, just so we can easily follow up on that information. So I'll end with just a few reminders about how else to stay in touch. There is required mailed and posted notice for all these meetings during the process. So letters will go out about Planning Commission and City Council public hearing. And then there will also be signs posted along the corridor. You may have seen those already earlier in the process. We'll continue getting the word out that way. And then we also have my Raleigh subscription, which you can sign up for off of the project page. That's email updates about the project. And then finally, feel free to reach out to staff. John and I are working on the mapping project and be happy to answer any questions or discuss anything you'd like if you think of something. So that is the end of this presentation. I will stop sharing. And then maybe I see we've got a few more attendees. We can turn towards questions.
Deanna, can I just add one thing about the engagement portal? You kind of talked about this, but if you put in the engagement portal that you would like to have your property added or removed from the TOD zoning, We're in most cases not going to directly respond to that through the engagement portal or a follow-up phone call or email. What we're going to do is we'll package up all of those requests because we're going to present all of the content that goes into that engagement survey and present that. That's going to be included with the materials that go to the Planning Commission and the City Council. And we will also provide some additional analysis from staff about, what it means to add or remove those parcels. So if you do put that in the engagement portal that you'd like your property added or removed, don't expect an immediate response from staff saying we're going to take it out right now. The expectation should be that you can join the Planning Commission meeting when that occurs, which is likely to be April the 21st, and watch that discussion, see if the Planning Commission makes any changes to the proposed rezoning area, and basically you can contact at that point, directly contact the Planning Commission, and then once it gets to the City Council, directly contact the City Council members at that point. Let's see, I've got a question in the chat here. It says, will there be city-initiated rezoning cases for the TODs in this corridor as well, beyond applying the overlay? So that, and then it refers to, I'm not quite sure I understand the question. Ms. Yokoyama, would you like to, can you expand on that a little bit about what you mean? And you can unmute yourself, I think, if you just want to talk. This is a small enough group, we could just have a conversation. Oh, okay. It might be that you're referring to in the New Bern the New Bern station area planning process. The city is a similar rezoning that we're going to be proposing that would be applying the TOD overlay as well as proposing to rezone the underlying zoning that's already in place on those properties. Is that kind of what you're asking about? Is are we going to come back and do the underlying zoning for these Western and Southern? Okay, yeah, that is likely to occur. So basically, what's happened with this process is we have we do have planning documents for the Western and Southern corridors. So we have the Western Corridor Plan, which is actually just going to a City Council public hearing next Tuesday on April the 5th, and that's at 7 p.m. And so that is some preliminary planning for the Western Corridor. And then on the Southern Corridor, we have a plan called the Southern Gateway, which is not really focused on bus rapid transit, but it does provide some guidance. But so with this rezoning process, part of the motivation was there is already development occurring on these corridors. Just like everywhere else in Raleigh, there's interest, and the bus rapid transit is also contributing to the interest in development in the Western and Southern BRT corridors. And so the City Council was motivated in starting this process to try to make sure that before too much development occurs, we have some amount of the transit overlay applied in these areas in the most obvious locations. And that's the criteria that Hannah went over. In the areas that clearly are intended or already have multifamily residential, commercial, office uses, even mixed use developments, let's go ahead. We know that those are development patterns that are supportive of the bus rapid transit. Let's go ahead and apply the overlay. And then later, we will have another planning process for both the Western Corridor and the Southern Corridor that will really dig into the details like we're doing with New Bern station area planning and look almost parcel by parcel. Does the base zoning make sense? If it's right near a station area, does it make sense to have a low density residential zoning? Those types of things. So yeah, there is intended to be a follow-up rezoning case that would basically be these same areas, but more detailed and potentially including the base zoning districts. Here it looks like Janine has a question. Do you want to? Yeah, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and we can talk.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. How are you this evening?
I'm great. I had to have questions because I have been living over here almost 5 years, and it wasn't intentional for me to be like in public housing, but I had applied for public housing when I wasn't working with my son and stuff for facts. So I'm just trying to figure out what is my next step in regards to that, because when I looked at the paperwork, and I'm a paralegal, so I read all the legal work. So I was just like, yeah, it's definitely like right on the cusp of like my apartment. So I'm just trying to figure out like, what would I need to do? Like, do I need to be looking for housing? Do I need to be trying to like, I'm not really sure what I need to be doing, because I don't want to be just like kicked out and be, I just don't want to be kicked out and stuff. And I understand that, Raleigh is growing up. I grew up in Raleigh, so I know Raleigh growing up. So I'm just trying to figure out what's my next step as far as myself and my child in regards to trying to find housing and whatnot.
Okay. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about where you live? I mean, if you just tell us a street, we can kind of look.
Yeah, I can definitely tell you. I stay downtown. I stay in the heart of downtown. Right a block from Red Hat Amphitheater. I'm right off of South Street. So that's basically, I mean, the train station is literally right there. So,
are you at Heritage Park?
So the train station literally right there. So I hear the train every night. So I'm just trying to figure out like what's my next steps, because I'm a little nervous in regards to like what I need to do, because I'm not really sure in regards to like what should I be doing, because I've been living down here for a lot of years, and it's not because I was living down here. It's just because I'm from Raleigh, and I know Raleigh, and I love the area. I ain't gonna lie, I love living down here.
It's nice,
but I at the same time I understand that that changes have to be made, and I understand it, and I understand it completely.
It sounds like you live in Heritage Park. Is that right?
Yes, okay. I do. I live in Heritage.
Okay, so just so you know, we are going to be having a special meeting for Heritage Park residents next week on April the 7th. That's Thursday. And so we're going to be at the Heritage Park Community Center. That's an in-person meeting. But this is kind of a special situation with Heritage Park, where we are proposing to apply the TOD overlay to the Heritage Park property, which is owned by the Raleigh Housing Authority. So that is technically a separate agency from the city of Raleigh. And the Raleigh Housing Authority has already been planning to redevelop Heritage Park. And the reason they want to do that is because their existing zoning, and then with the TOD even more so, they would be able to have more units on the same amount of land with their current property. And so having more units means more families can have an affordable place to live near downtown. But that does mean that temporarily people do have to relocate while that construction is going on. And my understanding of that project is that they are going to make their best effort to phase the construction. So basically a portion of Heritage Park could be redeveloped. They build a new building, and as many families as possible can move into the new building. Then they redevelop. No,
because I mean they've been trying to do rehousing since like 2020, like right before the pandemic and stuff. So I mean I've been here since 2016. I've been here since 2016, so I've been here for a while. So I understand that whole aspect, but I don't want to be displaced because they're trying to do rehousing at the last minute. That's.
Oh, Janine, you muted there at the last line there.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, my biggest thing is I don't want to be displaced because they're making changes last minute. Like we've been waiting for this for like the whole past 2 years.
Well,
like
so
we've been waiting.
The message I want to share is that we work for the city of Raleigh, and we don't control what the Raleigh Housing Authority does. They have expressed that they want to pursue this redevelopment plan. The Transit Overlay District does not cause them to pursue redevelopment. That is a choice they're making as an independent agency because they think it's in the best interest of their agency's goals. And so, we have invited Raleigh Housing Authority staff to join us at the meeting next week on April the 7th. And so I think, that's probably a better venue to talk to them directly, although I do want to caution you that we don't want that meeting to be entirely focused on the redevelopment of Heritage Park. We do want that to also provide information about the zoning process. But I think the folks who work at Raleigh Housing Authority will be better able to answer some of those more specific questions. And what we're basically saying is the overlay district allows the housing authority to achieve more affordable units on the same property they already have. And so we see that as a positive, but it's their choice how they want to use that zoning, how many units they want to achieve on the property.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing, because like I said, I just don't want to be displaced as like I said, I consider myself a good tenant. I don't have issues or anything like that. So I'm just trying to figure out, and I'm from Raleigh, so I've been born and raised. I've seen Heritage Park grow up. I've seen Heritage Park grow from a lot. So I'm just saying. So my biggest thing is just like, okay, I don't want to be, okay, I understand that y'all doing what y'all are doing, but I don't want to be like last minute and it's like, okay, you got to get out. And that's my biggest thing, because that's a disservice to me. And I'm just trying to figure out. I mean, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I don't have personal experience that compares to yours, but yes, I understand that what you're describing, to have a tenuous housing situation where you're not sure how you're going to meet your housing needs. Yeah, absolutely. That's just kind of scary. And yeah, I understand that's difficult. So, I mean, we really appreciate your comments and you being here, and we look forward to you, if you want to join us next week, talking to you more. I do want to ask other folks if they have questions so we can make sure we have time for everybody. And I do see a hand from Aisha. So I'm going to ask Aisha if she'd like to ask her question.
Hello, how are you doing?
Doing pretty well. How are you?
Great. I remember you from a meeting I was on before. I'm not sure if you know who I am because you speak to so many people, but I was just curious because I was reading over 2 different flyers that I got from you guys. So here, the City of Raleigh staff expects the rezoning process to be completed in early summer of 2022. The final decision of whether the approval of the rezoning and properties to include will be made by the City of Raleigh, which I heard you explain that earlier. So could you explain when you say rezoning being completed by summer of 2022?
Yeah, so the rezoning process is establishing the laws, the regulations that control what type of development can occur on a piece of property. And so this process has begun. We have a tentative planning commission date, which we think will be April the 21st. And if that's confirmed, you should get a letter in the mail about that as well. And so that planning commission is basically the first meeting of an appointed or elected board. So the planning commission is appointed by the city council. They provide guidance and recommendations about rezoning cases like this one. So they get the first look at the case before it goes to the city council. So they could start that in April. And they typically, especially on a case this size, are going to take probably a couple meetings. So they'll probably hold it through most of May. And then it could probably get to the city council either at the end of May or early June. And then the city council would schedule their public hearing to receive public comments. Like the planning commission also receives public comments at least one of their meetings. And then, so once the city council gets the recommendation from the planning commission, they schedule a public hearing, and that would be, the way it's looking now, probably the first meeting in July. And then city council takes a break in the summer. They take off about a month where they don't have meetings. So I would say potentially that first meeting in July, the city council could hold a public hearing. And at that point, they are legally able to approve or take action on the zoning case. They could also hold it in the same way that planning commission can and talk about it more, receive more public comment if they want. So yeah, I mean, probably sometime around July, maybe into August is when we would expect the city council to take action. And so what that means when the city council takes action is it means the overlay district is then placed on the zoning map. So it's changing the map, and that by changing the map, it says which properties are subject to these rules, these laws of zoning. It does not cause any development. Zoning is different from construction. So again, zoning is the rules. And then once the zoning is in place, the owner of the property, which could be a private owner, private individual, could be a public agency like Raleigh Housing Authority, they can choose at that point to apply for development permits that would be reviewed using the zoning. So, once the zoning is approved by the city council, any development that occurs after that point would still need to go through a site plan process that takes another 4, potentially 5 months is pretty typical for a site plan. And then they would be able to begin construction. So the rezoning does not mean that as soon as it's approved, development can occur. There's a whole other step of the process.
Okay. And I guess I'm getting a little confused when you say the BRT and rezoning. Those are definitely two different categories.
That's right.
Because they're added into one, it's a bit confusing to me because, you're saying BRT, which is for the bus rapid transit and what neighborhoods they're going to go through. But it affects so many people with their living situations. By price of living going up here, it's hard for people that's already living in this comfortable area to find another place. And so I think a lot of our concerns are not just with Raleigh Housing Authority, but me personally, as you are a planner and developer, or whatever you want to put it as, but it's a different lifestyle that we live to hear this because we already don't have enough money. And I don't know about all people, but I'm going to speak for myself. I already don't have enough money to, move. But because this TOD is taking place, it's actually helping out my community to say, yeah, let's get this done, which means rezone, demolish, whatever word they want to use, tear down our community. It kind of gives it a okay and push to, I guess make the downtown area look a little better in other words. But, I just want to know from as a planner or planning and development, under your contract or under your authority, how do y'all help us that's being affected get places to stay? Because, for instance, Raleigh Housing Authority, they tell us one thing, but unfortunately we can't get back in here when everything is rebuilt and done over, because only a certain amount of buildings will provide that much space for people with, low income, under the 60% AMI, and it just like, if this keeps happening, making people pockets fatter to, basically make it look better or whatever, however you want to put it, is hurting a lot of families. Families that didn't think that they would see this happen to them is now happening to them. And it's all to make the city better per se, build apartments that is stacked, like, to me, too high. One of y'all places that y'all have downtown right now, which is an old hotel, Sir Walter Raleigh. That's a perfect example of things that the money should go on as far as development. You have a building that's in that basically structure of this tall 10-story building that's housing elderly people, okay? That building, and I just want to get this out here because my mother stays there, has been, so many problems has been happening with the elevator. Like right now, I just want you to know that there's senior citizens there stuck, cannot get out because the handicap elevator is broken, Like money needs to be going towards things like that, like taking care of problems that's already here, that the city has authority over, if that makes sense, or, developers coming in and trying to build around it, but we're not taking care of the problem that's at hand and we're steady displacing people. And that's not okay. It's just so traumatic. Like, people really cannot afford, we can't play that catch up game that I guess the city wants us to do and whatever, it doesn't work that way. So I just want to know, like, what is the city going to do for us?
Yeah.
I'm not looking for my neighborhood to do anything. What is the city going to do? Because they make so many decisions for us as people. It's quite sad, I mean, I don't know how I feel, but that's just how it is at this point. And so we want to know, what can others do, to help us get out of the situation that we're basically being forced in?
Yep. So I'm going to go through a couple different topics. So the first thing I want to talk about is the production of affordable housing units. And so the city of Raleigh has a department called the Housing and Neighborhoods Department. And that is the department that's responsible for city programs to produce new affordable housing units. And the main funding sources they have for that is there is a property tax, a portion of the property tax that's paid by all property owners in Raleigh that is dedicated to affordable housing. And that generates about $5 million a year. The goal is to use that $5 million a year to produce somewhere in the range of 500 affordable housing units every year, new affordable housing units. And in the last 3 to 4 years, my understanding is that the city has met that target of around 500 units of new units each year. The other source of funding is a bond referendum that was passed, which I believe is for $80 million. And that is also going to be used, a large portion of that is going to be used for production of new affordable housing units in Raleigh. Another portion of it is being used for down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. And another portion is used for repairs for existing homeowners who are earn low incomes. So, yeah, I mean, it is very difficult for the city to meet the demand for affordable housing because there's just a lot of demand for housing at all in Raleigh. And what happens is people who make a high enough income where they don't need affordable housing, and at this point I'm referring to not non-subsidized affordable housing, so just maybe an older apartment building that rents for a low rent. There are people who make high enough incomes where they could rent somewhere more expensive, but if that's the only place available, they'll take that. And then it kind of works its way down the income ladder, where then there's fewer units available for the people whose incomes where they do need that lower rent unit. So it is difficult to keep up with that demand, but the city is attempting to do that. And so the other thing that we want to achieve is that if there is new development, and we know that there is going to be new development because, again, there's a large amount of demand for people to move to Raleigh, that if there is going to be new development, the new development should be adding housing units and should be in building types, residential buildings that are likely to rent for lower amounts than a single family house. So if someone has property where they currently have a single family house, in a lot of the zoning in Raleigh, it's basically you can replace a single family house with another single family house or a duplex. And so, or maybe townhouses if you have a big enough lot, but in a lot of cases, it's not a big enough lot for townhouses. And so what we're trying to do is say, if somebody is already deciding that they want to sell their property to a developer, which we know is occurring, because we can see that developers are buying single family houses, tearing them down and building larger single family houses. So what we want to do as part of the result of this zoning is to say, if we know that someone's going to be doing that, let's give them another option other than just making a bigger single family house that's going to be even more expensive. Let's give them the option to do a duplex, a triplex, a small apartment building, so that and then apartment units are typically going to rent for less than a single family house is going to rent for, in addition to just being able to achieve more housing units on the same amount of land. And so just without even subsidizing housing, those methods can increase the supply of housing and provide housing types that are more affordable to people in middle and lower incomes. than just building a large single family house. So that's another thing that we want to do with this type of zoning. And then talking about, is this a means that the city wants to use to encourage redevelopment for aesthetic reasons, to make it look nicer? That is not the motivation for this. The city is making massive public investments to make, areas all over Raleigh more attractive and more importantly than more attractive, more functional and safer for people. And that includes the investment in Dix Park, the investment in pedestrian facilities along the bus rapid transit routes. So New Bern Avenue is going to get a multi-use path along the bus rapid transit route that's there. So those investments that's public money, that's city money. It's not involving private redevelopment. It's involving, those are public facilities for everyone to use. That's not a motivation to make things look nice. The motivation is that if we know that a development is occurring, we want to make sure that new development has more housing with more affordable options.
Okay, thank you.
Carmen has joined us. Carmen, it looks like you have your hand up. Would you like to ask a question?
I do have a question. Thank you. Sorry I was so late getting on here. My question, because I have come to this very late in the game, are the incentives, what types of incentives are there for developers to build housing that is affordable? I mean, I know you just talked about that, but other than saying that there can be more density, what kind of incentives is the city offering for housing to be more affordable?
Thanks.
Because the issue that I'm dealing with on the other side of town, the housing that the developer is interested in is smaller, but it's not affordable.
Yeah. Okay. So the incentive, so in the transit overlay district, the key incentive is a height bonus. And so the way that would work is if you have a 3-story zoning, so let's say you're in a residential mixed use district with a 3-story maximum height, normally the tallest building you could build would be 3 stories. If the transit overlay district is applied to that same property, you could build a building that's as tall as 5 stories if that building includes some affordable housing units. And the amount of units is 20% of the units on the extra floors that you get. So in that scenario, it was 2 additional stories that could be achieved. So in those additional floors, 20% of the units, residential units, would have to be affordable. And affordability in the TOD means affordable for a household earning 60% of the area median income or less. And it has to stay affordable at that rate for 30 years. So that's the incentive within the transit overlay district. It's basically allowing the developer to develop more on the same piece of land. And so what we believe would happen is a developer would say, okay, I'll get enough additional market rate units, additional units that I'll rent that don't have to be affordable, that I'll make profit on those, and I'll make enough profit from those that it's worth my time and effort to provide the affordable units. They basically balance each other out and they still make money on the project. And so that's a way where the developer is serving their own interest as a developer, which is to make a profit, but they also can provide affordable housing units. So that's in the TOD. Now, in addition to the TOD, there are incentives just for affordable housing in general. And the major incentives are federal and state tax credits. So basically, if someone invests in an affordable housing development that meets the requirements, Janine, I think you are not muted. Do you mind?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. I'm just over here thinking. I'm sorry.
That's okay. that the federal and state tax credits, you know, somebody could invest in an affordable housing development, and basically the profits that they make from that investment are not taxed as much as they normally would be under, you know, federal and state income tax. And that basically gives people an incentive to invest in those projects. And then the city itself provides additional financing for projects like that. And that is the primary way that the city tries to produce new affordable housing units, is to supplement the financing for the projects that receive those federal or state tax credits. That basically there are, in many cases, a developer can build apartments. They get the federal or state tax credits, and they get a little bit of additional funding from the city. And between those two incentives, they are able to make a profit. Even in some cases, even if they're not a nonprofit whose mission is based on providing affordable housing, sometimes they just make a profit from doing that. So there are incentives. I see Janine has a question in the chat. I do want to make sure we had a phone caller, I think, who joined at a 612 number. I'm going to ask the phone caller to unmute. And so when I do that, phone caller, it is going to give you a notice through your phone that you are now able to unmute yourself, and you'll have to press a button to do that. So I'm going to ask you to unmute. If you have a question, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask it. So should be able to unmute yourself now. And you are unmuted. Phone caller, did you have a question? Okay, not hearing a question. All right. Let's see. We can go back to Janine's question. It looks like there was a follow-up. Is it Kita? Am I pronouncing that name right?
I think she mentioned her mic wasn't working earlier.
Oh, right. Yep. Okay. I got a question. Where will the recording be available? We think we post those on the web page, if I remember correctly.
Yep, that's right. We will, as soon as we're able to get it uploaded, add it to the project page, the TOD mapping project page.
Yep, called TOD mapping. So that's a search term that works well on the city website. You search for TOD mapping, and should be posted on there within the next week or so. All right, well, we are open for questions. You can type them in the chat, or if you'd like to just unmute yourself, we have a small enough group where I think we can unmute and just speak freely. And if you do have questions about other things going on in Raleigh, you know, we can answer those as well. So if there's other planning processes or projects going on. But I think, yeah, so Janine's question about how do you get an affordable housing unit? The city website has a pretty good page for that to get started. Let me see if I can add that up here. All right, so I'm going to put a link in the chat. This page is called Affordable Rental Housing. It's on the city website. It talks a lot about what does the area median income mean. So how do you know if your income meets one of those percentages? It also has some useful links to agencies that help you locate available affordable housing units. So yeah, I would recommend that's a great place to start if you are looking for an affordable rental. A lot of good resources on that page. I think Wake County has a similar page on their website. It might be linked from that page. All right, well, not hearing a lot of questions. We are here for you, but if you feel satisfied and don't have any additional questions, feel free to go about the rest of your evening. Basically, if once everyone else has left, then we'll sign off and bring the meeting to a close, but we'll keep it open for questions.
John.
Yes.
So we attended a meeting with city leaders and planners. It's been, I think it was before COVID. And they talked about the Southwest plan with Garner Station being the end unit, and the city had already gotten permission to start there and then come in front of where the Hispanic Plaza is. Do you have any plans on any updates on that as to when construction actually starts? Is all that approved?
Let's see. I think I feel like you're asking about the bus rapid transit design, the actual construction of the bus rapid transit route.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So the Southern Corridor route does go on South Wilmington Street from downtown Raleigh into Garner, and the final stop will be pretty soon after you get into Garner from Raleigh, just a little bit south of Tryon Road. There will be, actually, I think it's just a little bit north of Tryon Road. But so that's the design. It is very preliminary right now. So basically, the way the order is going, New Bern Avenue, the eastern corridor from downtown, is being designed first, and that design is now complete, and they are ready to start looking for a construction contractor to actually build it. I think they're putting that out for bids. And so New Bern will be the first one. At this point, it's not actually clear which one, whether Western or Southern will pull ahead, because they're both kind of being designed at the same time. I think they're both around what's called 30% design. And so 30% design, and when I say design, I'm talking about the engineering. So how are they actually going to build the lanes in the street, the stations where the passengers get on? How does that all fit within the street? What are the exact dimensions of everything? So I think Western and Southern are both right around the 30% design, which means not very far along. So there will be a 60% stage and then a 90% stage, and they'll have public information about each of those coming up. And so let me see if I can find the links to those web pages, because those are going to be good web pages to track, when there's new information about the 60% and 90% designs on those. So I'm going to put in the chat the Western one. Yep, so they're still in preliminary 0 to 30%. So just put the link for the Western, and then the Southern, I'll add that one as well. So yeah, in terms of, exactly where is the station going to go, exactly how are they going to design the dedicated lanes for the buses, those details are not completely worked out yet. The general station locations are available. And so I think on each of those pages that I just shared in the chat, there are videos that you can watch. And I think those are good resources for some, preliminary information. Where is the bus going to go? Where are the stations generally going to be located? Those kinds of things.
So what are the completion dates then, or projected? Like, since New Bern is going to be first, what's the completion date of that? And then Western and Southern are their projected completion dates. If so, what are they?
New Bern, the goal is to be taking passengers on the New Bern route sometime in 2023. So they really want to get the construction going, this year, 2022, and be done with construction. Now, obviously, with the way construction is right now, that can be difficult to predict. And then Western and Southern, again, not clear which one's going to go first. There are a couple of challenges with Western because there's also road projects going on. So like the reconstruction of the Blue Ridge Road interchange, there's a couple of projects like that where they're having to coordinate the bus design with those. So it might be that Southern actually goes first, but both of those are basically looking to have taking passengers around 2026 or 2027 is the time frame. So, about 4 or 5 years from now. Let's see.
Did you put the plan for New Bern as well? I know you did Western and Southern.
Yeah, I could put that one in the chat as well. New Bern.
Thank you.
I think I saw a question about, I thought it was supposed to be 2020. Yeah, I'm not sure. There probably have been some different timeframes since the beginning of these ideas. I mean, the original Wake Transit Plan that proposed these bus rapid transit routes was approved in 2016 and then funded by a sales tax referendum that was approved by voters in 2017. So, I mean, these have been in the works since that time, but, it does take a while to, because first what happened on New Bern is they also did the multi-use path project. So they wanted to put in the, basically it's like a bicycle path and a walking trail that'll be on the south side of New Bern Avenue along the bus rapid transit route. So that project kind of got ahead of the BRT. And then now they're doing the BRT and we are ready to go towards construction. So yeah, there might have been some different timeframes earlier. Where is the end of the Southern route on the BRT? So like I said, I think it is near Tryon Road. I think what's supposed to happen is that Wilmington Street will have a new extension that actually goes out on the west side of Wilmington Street after it passes South Saunders. And let me look that map. And that extension goes down into the shopping center on the south side of Chapanoke Road. And so I think that is basically where the last stop would be, is between Chapanoke and Tryon, where that shopping center is. Let's see, not as far south as Station Mall. Let's see. I am not, I'll be honest, not terribly familiar with the shopping center names in when you get down towards Garner. So I think it is.
It's North Station and South Station. Unless it's changed, what they said, the planner said at the meeting was that the last stop is at Garner Station. And they had gotten permission from Garner to have it there. And then in front of what you just said, in front of the shopping center would be the second stop.
On Garner Station is Is that where the Lowe's is?
It's across the street from Lowe's. That's where you have Carly C's, Gabe, Kickback Jacks.
Yep. Yeah, that's why it's not showing up. So yeah, I think you are correct. I'm looking at the city's street map, which shows that at Wilmington Street Extension, and it stops at where the Carly C's is, behind that shopping center. Yeah, I think the intent would be that it would come to that station. I think there's some question about, you know, how does that new street get constructed? And there's probably a chance that when it's initially starts operating, it just operates on Wilmington Street. And then in the future, there'll be the parallel connect. And let me pull up the map and I'll show you what I'm talking about. That'll be easier. So this is Raleigh's street plan. And so when you come down Wilmington Street, you come to South Saunders. And at that point today, Wilmington Street just becomes South Saunders. In the future, the plan is that the Wilmington Street
You're muted.
Yeah, John, the audio went out.
Huh.
It's back now though.
Okay, so you're able to hear me? Okay, yeah. So the street plan is that, you know, South Wilmington Street meets South Saunders, and then in the future, it would actually be extended to the west, closer to Renaissance Park, and continue down to Garner Station, where the Carly C's and Kickback Jacks is. And so, but I think, you know, those street connections have to be constructed at some point. And so I think when you're saying you have approval, I think what that approval means is like being able to have the bus go through potentially this shopping center, which I think is a Walmart, and then continue. But you know, I think those are the kind of questions that have to be answered by the design project. And that's what, you know, we're talking about 30% design. They have to figure out, okay, how, you know, if there is an initial running pattern where it goes on Wilmington Street until those new streets are built, what does that look like? And then if the new street is built, who's building that street? How long does that take? So, like I said, it's early in the process where those types of details are still being worked out. But yeah, I can tell you, the Town and Garner is excited about the BRT. They are, you know, ready for it to be an asset for their residents. And we're happy that they are partnering with Raleigh and the Go Raleigh, Go Triangle transit agency.
Thank you all, the three of you, for presenting. Appreciate it. Thank you for answering our questions. Hope everyone has a good night.
You too.